Hi, my name is Penny Owen, and this is
Bill Cecil.
And we're welcoming you back to Successful Kids, Successful Schools. I'm going to, for 2 minutes, go back to the premise of Successful Kids, which is you start out making successful kids. We aren't trying to socialize them to be successful adults because they're concrete thinkers and they don't know what that means. Okay, in this process, Bill created a program that he calls Best Year Ever. And we have been focusing on Best Year Ever and the principles of it. The first one is the whole class must have a shared vision that they can actually have the best year ever, everyone in that class. The second one is you need to know how to build a team. The third one is you, the teacher, have to be authentic in building that sense of a best year ever. You're open, you're honest, you're forthright in your approach to education, even if you have been given a script that you have to maintain. And now we're going to get to the one that I think is enormously tough, and it's listening. The power of listening. I'm going to talk about this for just a couple minutes and the importance of it. What makes a school different than being homeschooled or being, taught online is you're working with a group, you're building a community. And we are beginning to really feel the impact of that since COVID, when a whole group of our kids were taken out of school for a good year and had to come back in and didn't have a sense. They didn't have kindergarten, basically, right? They didn't know how to learn how to socialize. They didn't know how to learn how to listen. We also kind of fell apart our listening skills when everything was about individualized instruction and everything was done on your Chromebook or your computer, so you didn't have to listen to other people.
Texting. Think about texting. Everybody communicates through text. That's not listening.
No. And not only that, but until recently, you could bring your phone into the classroom and text while the teacher was talking, which is all sort of amazing. So the skill, the art of listening has really collapsed in America. We don't listen. We anticipate so we can set up our argument, right? So Bill might be talking, but my brain is not hearing a word that he says. My brain is saying, how do I beat him? Or wait, I got a better idea. I got something that I want to say. So I have disengaged in the conversation. Okay, this is a serious problem. We talk about the difference between hearing things and actually listening. Listening involves empathy. Listening involves literally reacting to, instead of, are you finished yet? So is it my turn?
Right.
Am I getting a turn at this? And no matter what anybody wants to think, we live in a democratic form of government. We live in a form of government that wants people to have deliberative conversations, to sit and talk to one another and solve problems. And that requires listening. So I am now going to say that I'm turning this over to you because a really big component of Best Year Ever is the art of listening.
Huge.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So
Any
you
teaching.
Go for it.
Yeah, and again, Best Year Ever is it's the theme I used in my room and the approach I used. But again, you can do whatever you want, but listening is always going to be important in the classroom for sure. For me, I loved what you said about the art of listening, because it is an art. It's something that you have to learn. And little kids, they're still learning that art form. There's many adults that could use learning that. And I remember the first time I ever really got my first lesson in this was when when I played college soccer, we had donors that helped fund the program somewhat, and so we'd have donor dinners, and we were supposed to put on a suit and tie, which was awkward for us. We were young players, and we had to go mingle. And mingling was like a nightmare for me because it still is. I get nervous when I'm thrown into a situation. I have to just walk up to people and start talking to them, and I don't know them. So, but they taught me a great lesson, and that is that when you're listening to somebody, always listen with more than just your eyes, or your ears. Just look at them and really engage with them and use your whole body. Just react to what they're saying. We do that. Like if somebody says something and it's sad, well, sometimes we sag a little bit, and we're not acting. It's just our body reacts because we're really listening with heart, And so I liked what he said, but he also said, but listen for something that they say that interests you, that you can ask them a question about. And then when they answer that question, really listen to what they're saying, because now you've found out they're passionate about it, probably. And if they're passionate about it, dig a little deeper and say, so you said that, so tell me more about that. And if you don't like to talk about yourself, you're talking with them, but when they walk away, what they're going to say is, I love talking to that person because they really listened to me. And so you didn't have to do much talking. You were just sort of taking it in and then giving it back. So you have to listen. If you're waiting just for your turn to talk, well, I gotta top your story, like you said, or I gotta one up you, then you're not listening, and they're gonna start. So now it's just sort of like a weird debate you got going back and forth, and so you're not really connecting. And so in the classroom, you got to connect. As a teacher, you got to connect with your students, and my students have to connect with each other for this whole thing to work, for the team to work.
I have a question about this.
Yeah.
In every class,
Yeah.
And I so remember, so I'm going to say this kid's name, Marcus, was in a class I taught in Akron. Yeah. And Marcus was the smartest kid in the class, by far the smartest kid. But he was always in trouble, so he always sat separately from the rest of the kids. Okay. Because he had to talk without raising his hand, right? I mean, he shouted. Actually, that's not true. He'd raise his hand and talk at the same time.
No wait time. Yeah.
I kind of think of him as there was a Sheldon-esque sense about him. Okay. But he was a terrible listener. Yeah. But there are kids that are so like that. Their brains are going so fast. Yeah. How do you deal with that kid that is super smart, that really wants to participate and engage with others, but they're skillless at the art of listening? Yeah.
So what you're asking for is for them to have more wait time, to not just blurt it out and interrupt
pretty
people,
much, yeah.
Like that. Yeah. Because that is, again, that's part of the art. Like even when we're talking right now, you're talking about something, but there's something I want to share that might kind of cement it in, or help me to cement it in my mind. So there's a difference between interrupting and maybe just sort of trying to inject as you go, so feed off each other, So that is an art. What I would do with my kids is this. I would have them, for example, they could have a notepad out, and we had notepads they could have, and they would just, if I'm saying something and I'm saying, now I want you to wait a little bit, let me have a few minutes to talk about this, and I'll ask for questions. But if you have a question, if you raise your hand, and I'll say, I'll get to that in a second, but you got to do it now. Just write it down. Just pick up your pencil and write down that thought. Mm-hmm. And then when we start questions, I'm coming to you first to read me your question. And so they get in the habit of doing that, so it doesn't become good. Yeah. So it's just managing with them to say, what do you, I want you to be heard. I want you to not lose your idea, but I want it to be when it's time for that, and right now I don't want to break this train of thought. And so that's one way to do that. Like a couple of times I know when we talked through doing these podcasts is that I'll come back at the end and say, I want to go back first and talk about what you said because I really like that. Mm-hmm. So what I was doing is saying I was really listening, and I really am going to use what you said to help build off now what I'm about to say. And so that's a compliment to somebody. It's like, wow, you really are listening to me. I'll tell you the worst example is when I'm at a party or anywhere with anybody, and I'm telling them something really, really important, and all of a sudden something dings or buzzes or something, and right away they're looking at their phone. For me, that's the end of the conversation. Yeah. I'll say, was that an emergency? Is everything okay? Oh, yeah, I was just, and I'll say, okay, well, I got to get going, but we'll pick up this conversation again. And if they'll say, did I insult you? I'll say, well, it just felt like all of a sudden I thought we were engaged, and all of a sudden
that phone is more important.
That became more important, and so I'm going to let you get back to that, Mm-hmm. And if I lose that person as our contact, I don't care, because it's just a rude thing to do. Now, if it's an emergency, I'm saying, I'm so glad you took that, and so anything I can do to help or whatever, or we can keep going, great. But if
nothing is worse than going to dinner and having everybody have their phones out right next to them.
I see that all the time now.
And there's like
And the kids,
And they're looking at it constantly. I'm like,
or worse, the kids are sitting there and the parents are on their devices and the
Right.
kids sitting there looking around and trying to get their attention.
totally ignored.
Ignored. Totally ignored. And that's the problem. And so I'm not anti-social media. It's just we gotta balance it out in our lives. And so I think still face-to-face, these are soft skills you're gonna need in your life.
Right.
Yeah, you can Zoom a lot and do other things, and that's great. And what we're doing, it's online. That's fantastic. But you still have to get out in the real world and make eye contact with people, say hello to people, listen to people, get to know people. Because right now we're so tribal in this country.
Right.
Because we don't listen to each other. We listen to other people telling us what to think, and then we start to believe that's the reality instead of going out and meeting people and talking to people and getting, you know what? It's okay we don't have the same opinions, but I respect your opinion. I just don't agree with it, and here's why, and we're good with that. But that's what happens in the classroom.
Okay, the eye contact. I mean, the minute you said it, I was like, yeah, I was so going there. Yeah. Because, I told you that, and because you went with me, I spent 8.5 years working with kids in prison. And this was right outside of Detroit. They're pretty tough kids, and eye contact was not. If you made eye contact with somebody, it was a threat. Oh wow! Yeah, so you
got to read your audience, I guess. No.
Well, so that's when we did mirrors.
Oh, and you're breaking it down.
Right. We did mirrors, and at first. These kids were so uncomfortable with it because it's like, no, I don't look at somebody unless I am threatening them. Like, no, you look at them so you connect with them. Yes. So I had to literally change their cultural values.
That's cool.
Because I was teaching them theater.
Right.
Right. And it was a game.
Yeah.
Mirrors, which I've talked about 8 million times.
Right.
And which is such an important game because it's all about really being connected on, I'm not just listening, I'm watching, I'm getting a feel for everything that's going on in you. And that, back in the day of gangs, that was the threat. If I'm looking at you, I could possibly hurt you. Now I'm trying to get them to, I am looking at you because I'm connected to you and we are going to work together on something.
Which isn't that what most people want in life? They want to feel connected.
Except what I'm going to next is what's happened is that the phone is the same thing as these gang kids not making eye contact because it's a threat. It's like I have taken away your ability to totally connect because you are glancing down at that phone. Like I love the fact that you walk away from people when they glance down at their phones and go, yeah, I've got to take this. Excuse me. I'm like.
I don't know if it's a quick peek, but if it's
Right. Actually, I don't even like a quick peek.
I know. I don't either.
I make a point of going, if I'm going in someplace, I'm not bringing that phone.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to engage with the people.
I'm the same way.
I'm going to spend 2 seconds on my mother. So back in the day, you went to brick and mortar stores, right? And my mother would go in, and my mother, of course, it's like, if you're waiting on me, I'm first, right? And if the phone would ring, the salesperson would say, just a minute. And my mother said, no, you don't have a minute. I'm gone. And she'd go, but she'd gone. It's like, no, we are engaged. Right. I am here, and I am actually here to buy something from you. Yeah. Whereas this phone call, they're not buying anything from you. So like, you focus on me, lady.
I was here first. Come on.
But
respect.
Just the art of listening isn't just, I heard what you said. Right. No, it's like I am listening to what you're saying, and I am empathizing with what you're saying, and I am going to respond and react. It is so much bigger than just hearing. Right. And I feel like, teachers will say, listen, but they don't get what, but if you, again, play these games. So I'm going to go back to there. So I have a whole series. Every drama teacher has a series of listening games, listening skills, because they will tell you over and over again, acting is reacting. right? You have to be responding to what
Improv, you can't do it without it.
Oh, improv is total reaction, right? So you have just to be glued to that person. So we would do this game that we call the interview game, and Bill would be, say, person A, and I would be person B. As person B, there's a basic question that I ask, like, what do you see in this room? Okay, so for the next 2 minutes, Bill's going to talk for 2 minutes, and I cannot respond. I cannot talk. My job is to just watch him and watch everything he's doing while he's talking. I'm not criticizing him. I'm not saying, oh, you missed that, and you missed that, and you missed that. When it's my turn to talk, I'm saying, this is what I saw and heard. I might hear that, well, you really like that painting, and I could tell because your eyes lit up, or you didn't like the color of that wall because your voice dropped in pitch, so I am noticing every detail, and that means I am actually listening to you as a full human being.
Yeah, body language. That's why it's called language.
Right.
You're right. You're picking up more information, and so it's almost like listening to what you're doing.
Right.
And so in absorbing it.
Right. And then you reverse it, and person B is the one that is interviewed, and person A is the one that's listening. But what's interesting to me is I always do this as one of the beginning exercises, is that kids begin to like one another. And I think, isn't that interesting and kind of weird? Because it's not like they're saying anything. Although you do get to this, you ask them, what do I notice about myself at the end? What am I noticing about myself? And then you ask them, what am I noticing about myself that I don't particularly like? Right. And then it's deep and personal. They don't have to spend as much time doing this. Right. And there's a lot of pauses. Gotcha. And pauses become a really interesting thing. There's so many things about listening that we just think I heard the words. So
that's why I think in-person talking is way better, because you also feel their energy.
Right.
And you almost start to match energy, I think, if you're really listening to each other. Sometimes people say, you read my mind almost, because we're thinking the same thing. I think it's because of that energy, you're really connected.
Right.
So I think that's huge.
And I'm going to talk about this in a different way. And it's watching a television show, a movie, or whatever. They change that screen every two seconds or less. So 1, 2, change, 1, 2, change, 1, 2, change. There's something called slow cinema now. I had never heard of it, but I love slow cinema. If you watch Ordinary People back in the day, and you watch Mary Tyler Moore respond to her kid, that camera stays on her forever. And she goes through 3 or 4 feelings during that time. Yeah. Well, if what I'm used to, what kids are used to, and what we're all used to is change, I have no time to listen.
That muscle, you're building up that muscle.
Right.
Instead of the other one.
And it's like, no, fast.
Wears you out.
I can't think. I can't absorb.
Right.
So there's so many ways that we have, I call it killed listening.
Yeah, I like it, because that is huge. And in my classroom, that's a big part of, I got to get my kids to start doing that. So what I would do is, for most exercises that we did, it was somewhat, again, cooperative learning, Spencer Kagan. It was, okay, now turn and tell your partner what we just talked about, or tell your partner one thing you heard. Okay, and then, and so they're always listening so they can respond, because they know they're going to have to respond to somebody, so they're really listening to me. But then what I'll do is, now I want to go around and ask people what they said. So I want to know that you're listening to them, so I'll call on somebody.
So this is great, because, again, in a classroom where it's all very structured, you're supposed to be doing this. Yes. you are still finding ways.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it takes less than a minute to just check in, keep them engaged, give them a chance to listen, get them a chance to react, let them be heard, and so it's a great, I mean, it's great for so many reasons, and it keeps them engaged in the lesson, which is the reason for what they want us to do. But it really does. What it does is it builds closeness, because I heard this once said, and I really believe it's true, that if you, it's harder to be mean to somebody you like or you care about than somebody you don't care about.
Yeah, true.
And so if these kids don't know each other, it's easy to be mean to each other. And that's what's happening online. I don't know you. I don't care about you. So I'm going to be mean, But if it's somebody you know and you've heard some of their stories or you've gotten a sense of who they are, it's harder to hurt them. So you tend to go out of your way to be patient, and you care about them, or you'll find somebody else not being nice. You might step in and say, hey, that's my friend. Don't do that. Right? I don't think that's right. But the point is that that's why you got to take time to build those relationships. And again, people think team building, I don't have time for that. It's too much work. No, you do have time, because it's an investment of time. We've talked about that.
Right. And it's that lady, what did you call her, Lily?
Yeah, Libby.
Yeah. Libby, who calls you up and says,
yeah.
I'm
7 weeks
weeks ahead.
Yeah, my curriculum, because she invested that time and it paid off dividends. Yeah, and so, and that's the thing. But again, it can even be 30 seconds. Turn to your partner. Or I would say, get up. This is what I would do. I would have them stand up, and then I would say, now, turn your back to each other. And then I say, when I say move, you got to move and put your back up to somebody else. I probably learned this in theater. And then what it was is turn and tell. You had to turn and face them and tell them something, whatever it was. It could be just a question I want them to talk about. It doesn't have to be school related. It could be more personal, whatever. And then I'll say, okay, now you have to, when I say go, turn back your back. So turn your back, or say thank you to your partner and then turn around. And I'll say, when I say move, and you're going to find somebody else. Turn and tell. So just these things, little things. Again, doesn't take more than 5 minutes. Get them up out of their chairs, get them moving, which is good for them because they've been sitting. So they're engaged, they're moving around, always talking to somebody different.
One of the things that I found interesting as a guest artist, is that I could go into a classroom, elementary classroom, right? Although nowadays they switch classes a lot, and I'm not a fan. I mean, I like keep the class together, build that team, but. No matter what, I would go into the classroom in December, January, and they didn't know the kids in their class.
I ask people that question too. I'll say, do you know that kid over there? No. And I'll say, do you know that kid over there? No. And then I'll say, wait a minute, are you new? No. Are they new? No. It's January, because I would say that.
Yeah.
How can you not know everybody?
It was just mind-boggling to me.
Yes.
Like, you have been in the same class with these kids
that is a sign.
For half a year, and you don't know their names.
I blame that on the person in charge.
Oh, yeah.
That is that says it's all about you and not each other. It's not about a team. This is not a team.
Right.
You don't even know their names. And people do that as adults. They'll say, we're going to have a big meeting. We're going to be working on a project together for in the district. That happened all the time. And I would go and they would say, okay, first meeting, let's go around the room and everybody introduce themselves. Say your name and where you teach. That's all they said. Okay, we're ready to go. Great. Now let's get started. Nobody's sharing because they're not comfortable with who these people are.
Right.
There's not even been any time for just to get to know each other.
Right.
So it's like, those are one of the ones where I'm like, I think I'll listen if I have to be here, but I'm going to be out that door so fast.
Right.
Because I don't want any part of this.
Because it all feels like a scam.
It is a scam.
I mean,
if that's how they're treating you, it is, or they haven't thought it through.
Professional development doesn't spend a lot of, I mean, we've now taken it aside from listening in a way, but the importance of I'm listening and I'm responding to you as a human being. Again, you cannot have a deliberative conversation unless you listen.
And that's why it does tie in, because that's how you build relationships. So those are just little things, and there's more, and we'll talk about them, I'm sure, as we go along. But yeah, that's how I try to, that's my main thing, is trying to get my kids to engage by always working on learning to listen, and not just listen, but to hear, really hear what they're saying and feeling. What are they feeling? And, and really get to know them through that. So, yeah.
And so we're getting ready to leave this episode. I'm going to spend like 2 seconds on something that I'm going to be spending a lot of time talking about, not next episode, but the episode after, which is the importance of imagination. And the thing about listening, remember our 4 skills: concentration, observation, cooperation, and imagination. If you're going to build something together, build a world together, have a deliberative conversation, you've got to open yourself to listen to somebody else's imagination. So I'm going to end us here. And next time, we're going to talk about what to me is the most crucial part of what it is that Bill and I believe. And that is every child is unique. So thank you and goodbye.